And so one of the things that we've got to do now is think about what it is that we can do. And so what I've done is I've made a list. I've made a list of hard things and then very hard things to do. Because here's the thing, is that it suits, now for a minute, won't you excuse me while I talk to my white compatriots in this room? It suits us to just wait for somebody else to settle the claims in court, put up a new law and whatnot. But it's time for us to do something because we can change the conversation. I had a conversation with Frank Shikani just a little while ago, last month. He said, Charlene, come here. He said, where are the others of you talking about restitution? And he meant, where are the other white South African leaders? I'm an academic. I get to a certain group. I'd speak to quite a few churches because I'm in the church myself. But where are the other white leaders standing up and doing the interviews on ENCA when AfriForum says what it says, when the chairperson says that apartheid wasn't a crime against humanity, when people are flying the old South African flag, when the whole of Rondebosch opposed the 150 Rand water levy, because it was 150 Rand, it could have bought you, I wanted to say a double gin and tonic, but I know you're in church. So. And where are you when the municipality retars the road in Milner Road and down all of the roads in Rondebosch that don't need retarring, while people are defecating in the open air and kids are drowning in the toilets? So that's the thing that we could be doing, which is actually quite small. Just make a noise and go say, no, we don't want that, right? So here's some of the other things that I thought of this morning, and I've asked my projectionist to put it up. Let me just get it so I can see it. So the first thing is conversations. In one sense, this hasn't been a conversation. We've been giving you stuff to think about and talking kind of at you a little bit, but we've really had an opportunity to hear from an expert in the field, from Brian, and we've had some questions, but what we didn't really want this evening is to just talk to each other, because we actually think that the conversation must also happen with people who are not the same as us. And if you look around the table, sometimes we're a little bit different, but often we're the same. And I think the conversation will be quite different if we speak together as black, white, coloured Indian South Africans together. White South Africans, we might speak less, for example. We might not just only raise the problems. And I don't want to pick on the person who raised the 8% question, but sometimes people ask that question to say, oh, you see how it didn't work, so therefore we mustn't continue. We've just got to find new and better ways of doing the thing that we know to be right. So, conversations. Rent-free accommodation. That's something that almost all of us could do. We could put up a student and not charge them rent for 3 years. That's about land and belonging and security. We could use our property differently. Those of you who are in retirement and your kids are gone, you could think about how you're using your property. You could subdivide it. You could denounce your inheritance from your parents. Now you could say, well, my parents didn't leave me anything. Well, that's okay, you don't have to. But most white South Africans, our parents are leaving us something. And what most white South Africans do with that money is they take a sabbatical and they go travel, or they build an extension to their house. We should stop doing that. We should reevaluate the rent you charge. If you are charging rent, think about how much it is. Brian spoke about this issue of perhaps a maximum wage. We did a survey, and 60% of our country thinks that a maximum wage is a really good idea in law. It might be a really good idea, because at the moment, the ShopRite CEO earns 500 times more than the person who packs the shelves. We need information. And I think that was something that I wanted to start the evening with by saying that you being here is amazing because you are informing yourself, but there's a lot more for you to know, right? And I know it's not your full-time job like it is mine and Ruth's, but there's so much more that we can do in terms of information. Holiday homes. I didn't put up the slide that I speak about in my book, but there's a little story that I tell about people who came back from the war, 1945, and if you were a black South African, a coloured South African, you got a bicycle from good King George to thank you. If you were a black South African, you got a Bible as a thank you present. And if you were a white South African, you got a lifelong pension or a piece of property. The piece of property just happened to be along the seaboard. And we know how much that is worth now, or up the Hermanus coast. So what do we do with holiday homes? Do we give them up? That is an option. But maybe we let people use them who would normally have holidays, not just our friends. And I know I'm touching everybody on their studio right now, right? Because Park Road, everybody in Park Road has a holiday house. I know, because I use those holiday houses. I wanted to say something about, Ruth mentioned a thing about subdivision of property. Do you know one of the reasons why farms are not allowed to be subdivided is because white South Africans in the 30s put in place such a morass of laws to prevent subdivision. Why? To stop people from living there and to entrench the privilege of a big commercial farmland or just a big beautiful vista. So in Betty's Bay, all of those farmlands, you've got to jump through incredible heaps to subdivide them. But they need to be subdivided so people can live there. And somebody needs to take that on in the courts for the reason of land restitution. Okay, the use of church land and facilities. Ruth spoke a little bit about the land that the churches own. Now I want to put my neck out a little bit and say the Anglican Church, the Moravian Church, the Lutheran Church, a lot of the churches who own land, yeah, it's the same as the traditional leaders in the Ngonyama Trust who owns land and gives it to people in a way that really is not just. And so every time we point the finger at Ngonyama Trust in Zululand, we also need to ask, how is it that the churches are administering their land, and should they be having the land that they have? So that's the big question. The small question is, how do you use your land? I know how much you paid for your church a few years ago. And I remember at the time people going, really? But it is a question that you've got to ask. Are you going to build another church in another area because you've got multiple congregations? Okay, let me get away from the studio for a minute. A rental fund, something that you can help people to rent houses closer to where they work, because that's a big issue in South Africa, traveling 50 kilometers to get to work, and then getting fired on the fourth time that you get to work late. Those are things that we need to bring to people's attention because they're part of the land injustice in our country. Help someone buy a house. A house in Anita Park is, 300 to 600,000 rand. It's just the houses here in Rondebosch that are 4 million rand, right? But help someone buy a house, someone you know, someone with whom you have relationships. Housing subsidies. The former president announced a housing subsidy for people who earn less than 13,500 rand was the kind of region. With all my academic knowledge, I don't know how to help people access that subsidy. No. Is there a church advice office? Is there something that you can do to help people access the existing things that are occurring? I made this issue, I said that we need to find wise people. When you watch the movie Impossible Return, you realize that it's not going to be easy. Some people are going to shut the door. Some people are going to come in and say, yeah, but the crime is so bad, we've got to hunker down. Some people are going to say, I don't know what to do. Some people are going to say, but I've only just started paying the bond off. It's going to be incredibly complicated. We need some wise people to give us some strategies. And we need to trust the wise people who speak to us. And one of the reasons why I think it's important for churches to develop these wise people is because you want to be able to say, oh no, Charlene, she's just a communist really. She's not really like one of us, right? But find wise people in your midst who are going to give you wise counsel. And let that wise counsel be some of these not so hard things to do. The gentrification issue, we need to think about that. Join the protest march. You know? Get onto the barricade, as it were. The next time people protest about Rondebosch Common, we love it. It's a lot of land. It's just what John Rhodes said, we can't use it for anything other than a greening belt. Maybe there's other greening belts, a little bit further away than just the walking distance that it takes. It's very convenient having the common right here. But convenience isn't the game, right? Subdivide your property, I spoke about, that's a kind of a hard thing to do. Sell your house, start again. And the thing is about selling your house and starting again, you'll be able to do it and pay it off before you retire again. Because we've got so much capital. We've got so much inheritance of skills and knowledge and ability. It's actually not hard to do. And that's one of the reasons why if you don't give your kids an inheritance, I promise you they're not going to suffer for it. They're going to get a job, earn more money, they're going to go travel, go to Dubai for a couple of years, earn some money, stock market, whatever. They'll be fine. Bit of rent control, kind of maybe some pressure groups around rent control. Buy a property and make sure you only charge people R2,500 a month and not 7 or 8 or 10. Commercial land development. There's a lot of corruption and insider trading around commercial land development in the city. Land claims monitoring. Ruth spoke about 40 or 50,000 rand. In my book, I speak about somebody who got 36,000 rand for 2 farms in the Eastern Cape, and they got told to return half of it because they'd made a mistake. So the land claims is horrible, and the process is really slow. And Michael, who we saw in the movie, Michael nearly has a nervous breakdown every time he has to think about working with land because it's so slow, so emotional, etc. So how do we monitor some of the land claims that is going on? Because what happens is people use it as a reason to say, no, but look, something's happening. If you only knew how small it was, what a small drop in the ocean it is, and only for people who are able to go and get all the evidence to bring to the courts. Alternative forms of security for people, standing surety for people. Now, that often I understand from a biblical point of view. It says, let us be no man's debtor, but this is different. This is saying, I'm going to be with this person in solidarity. And I think that's a biblical principle. Government-owned land, all the old military airfield bases, Kunnenborg, Salt River, where the railway siding is, huge tracts of land. Somebody needs to tell the Western Cape government and the national government, because I think it's them, but pressure groups. If you want a little bit of activism that you can do from your armchair and from your Twitter account, some of these things are it. You don't even have to leave, your house. Social housing, I've had a few people come to speak to me about this whole issue of, let's actually, as churches, own some property and then actually control the rent and make it possible for people, or charge people different rent. So you have some cross-subsidization close to the city. Inheritance tax. I know all of you are alive in this room, right? So you don't really know what inheritance tax is, but you may have had parents who died. So do you know that inheritance tax only kicks in after 4 million rand? Why not 1 million? And so inheritance tax is 25% after your inheritance is more than 4 million. Doesn't anybody want to write a letter to the Minister of Finance and say, why? Why? Why can't it be 50%? And why can't it kicking at 1 million rand? And why can't there be a clause that if it's a second generation inheritance, it's 75%? Why not? Well, it's because it's nice to have the money and the extra and the whatnot. And then the last thing, and I think this was an idea I had a couple of weeks ago, the consultation on land that the government is driving was meant to end in 2 weeks. It's now been extended to the middle of June. Write in and say, I'm a white South African that lives in Rondebosch, and I demand that we extend the conversation, that we raise inheritance tax, that we stop tarring roads that don't need tarring. Because you see, the people who write in are going to be the people from whom government will expect responses. And I think it might actually just also sway some sentiment when the DA hears that most of its voters are actually in favor of a new vision for equality and for freedom in our country. So, what do you think about that?